Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. It's remaining fairly unsettled, but it does look likely from the middle of the month we will see a big high pressure system take control, as we'll see on the GFS, GEM, Eastern WF and the ensembles. That is the certainty we have, is that it's going to be higher pressure, but the exact air mass, the wind direction and how long it will last, that is the uncertainty. Some models have us getting into potentially a bit of a warm southerly wind. Maybe it's too late to say an Indian summer because temperatures wouldn't probably rise much above 15 or 16 degrees, but it still would be very warm for this time of year. Others have more of the high pressure over the top of us, perhaps an inversion, which means in the daytime it'll be nice and sunny and dry, a little bit chilly overnight. There'll be frost and fog, and then even some other runs pushing it slightly further northwards, which is got a stronger potential, especially in the last sort of 10 days of the month, and it could produce easterlies or northerlies, which could be very cold and provide some winteriness. So high pressure building in, that is the certainty we do have from around the middle of the month, but where it moves in, how long it lasts, and where it goes eventually, that is what we've got to decipher over the next few days and the next week or so. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now to start on the live radar, you can see very little precipitation across the British Isles at the moment, which is quite a big change from recent times. We've had a lot of rain around, a lot of low pressure. Now this is not a change, this is just a brief bump of higher pressure between low pressure systems. So unfortunately the unsettled and cloudy weather will be returning most likely tomorrow. Weather front pushing in through tomorrow morning, giving them thick cloud and rain. So yes, it is a pretty pleasant day out there, quite dry, very sunny for many. Bit of a blustery wind, and that is keeping sort of a little bit of a chilly feel, and the temperatures rising to around 12 to 14 degrees. So decent November day, but it is, as I said, a brief blip in a general very unsettled next sort of 5 days or so. But as I said, towards the middle of the month it will be turning much drier, hopefully sunnier as well, but we can't distinguish that until we've got the exact air mass and wind direction sorted. But there are only a few smattering of showers across western Scotland and maybe northwest England, but apart from that, it is very, very dry. It's around 1:30. If we put on the temperatures, you can see it isn't a particularly warm day, but it's not a particularly cold day either. A lot of mixing of blues and yellows here, so sort of high single digits into the low teens. So again, not too bad for November, around average to above average. But again, with the winds coming in from the west, it is a bit of a chillier feel when those winds do get gusting. If we do go over to the UKV now and have a look at what the precipitation and the temperature is showing over the next 5 days, you can see today, very dry day. But you can see rain approaching from the west around midnight tonight, impacting parts of Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland for around 11 PM this evening, with some thicker cloud moving in for all. Now, this weather front is initially quite heavy, but it does sort of disintegrate away as it moves across Wales, England and Scotland, becoming more fragmented and lighter. Only a few bits of green here and a few specks of yellow, which is sort of moderate rainfall. So mostly light, drizzly sort of rainfall, but still will mean it's a little bit miserable in places. It should fragment, and some areas in the east could see just thicker cloud and a few patches of rain here or there. But again, it is very difficult to forecast exactly how these weather fronts do disintegrate, but the models are showing at the moment weather front is disintegrating. So the further east you are, the more likely you escape from the heaviest rain. But I do think you'll still see a bit of drizzle, a bit of light rain, and definitely some thicker cloud. Beyond that, we do continue to see that weather front move in. So again, still remaining fairly miserable, and the rain could pep up on the south coast around 5-6 PM before eventually moving out into the North Sea, and then we just go into a very unsettled theme. Some more heavier rain in the southeast, that could cause a few issues once again, as we've had a lot of rain there over the last few days. And then eventually Sunday, there will be sunshine, but there will also be a lot of showers, and these could be quite heavy. Some orange and red colours showing here, so maybe some thunder and lightning mixed in with a couple of them, but it generally is sunshine and showers day. And into Monday, again, a lot of heavy showers, but also maybe some sunnier spells at times, before again we see more weather fronts pushing in later in the week into Tuesday. Another low pressure spirals in, a bit of a squall line there potentially across parts of England, before eventually that clears out into the North Sea. But yeah, the very unsettled theme is continuing, and it doesn't look particularly great. So yeah, do cherish the rest of today. But luckily, as I said, perhaps around a week's time, week to 10 days time, we're going to be going firmly into higher pressure, which is going to mean a lot drier and probably a lot sunnier, but it might not help the temperatures all too much, especially if we see an inversion or the winds coming from anywhere from a north to easterly direction, as that will most likely bring in sort of a cold air mass. Even if it's not ridiculously cold, we could see an inversion at the surface. Now, if you do put on the 2-meter temperatures, you can see today those temperatures rose to around 10, 11, 12 degrees. So again, nothing too cold, but again, nothing particularly mild either. Some areas actually quite chilly, around 7 to 9 degrees. But again, with the wind, it's going to cool those temperatures, or make the feel like temperature even colder. You see, overnight tonight, temperature's going to drop away quite a lot, around 3 to 5 degrees widely in rural areas. So it could see a touch of frost in a few spots. And into tomorrow afternoon, those temperatures will rise around the same conditions. In the east, maybe only 9 or 10 as we're still stuck in cooler air. But where we've got some thicker cloud and rain in the west, although it probably will feel cold, the actual surface temperatures will be maybe 13 or 14 degrees because it is a warm front moving in. So it could be a little bit humid in the west, or at least humid relative to what we have at the moment. As we move beyond that into Sunday, you can see that warm air mass in the southeast eventually getting swept away by another weather front. And by Sunday afternoon, widely sort of 10 to 12 degrees, maybe 8 or 9 in more rural areas. Overnight again, temperatures not too bad because thicker cloud, and into Monday afternoon, temperatures rising, perhaps to maybe 15, maybe 16 degrees on Monday, so maybe slightly milder day there, and into Tuesday, once again, milder, 13 or 14 in the east, but cooling down from the north and the west. So you now go on to the mid to long range models by having a look at the GFS, GM, ECMWF and the ensembles to see what is going to be happening over the next couple of weeks with that big high pressure system likely to build in. You can see this brief ridge of high pressure over the top of us at the moment. It is a very brief ridge before low pressure returns. That's actually an ex-hurricane there, but of course it's well into sort of the colder waters now, so it is going to be turning into a general low pressure system, and it's going to be pushing in quite unsettled conditions, and that's going to continue all the way to around a week's time, where high pressure starts to build in. Now, GFS has been very optimistic with the high pressure. Today, it's a little bit more pessimistic, keeping that high pressure very firmly to our east and not pushing it particularly far northwards. Initially, it does pull up a southerly wind, so it could be quite a mild higher pressure, with around 10-degree isotherm potentially moving in there, so it could be seeing temperatures around 15 or 16 degrees. This is quite a mild option for westerly flow, pushes back in and it goes more unsettled and cooler. So breaking down the high pressure quite quickly there from the GFS today, which it's been very reluctant to do over the last couple of days. So perhaps this is one anomalous run, but definitely today, high pressure sticking around for maybe 3 or 4 days, but not the sort of week to 10 days that we had been seeing on some past runs. But again, whenever we get these big high pressure systems, they do chop and change quite a lot, and it is known that the models do sometimes break down these high pressures a little bit too quickly than they actually do in reality. So we've got to take that into account. But today, high pressure building in, definitely in toward the middle of the month, quite a mild high pressure from the GFS. And if we go over to the GEM, see how that does compare. Again, brief ridge of high pressure at the moment, then westerly unsettled conditions push in, for high pressure nudges in again, more of a continental flow here. Again, the tilt doesn't look the tilt on the isobars is slightly more southeasterly, so that means the air is coming slightly more off the continent. It will still be relatively warm, but towards the surface could be a little bit more of an inversion. Again, look at the dew points, colder dew points across the near continent. We did see those push in. It could cool those temperatures down a little bit towards the surface. Again, it is touch and go with that, and that would only decide really the surface conditions. But right towards the end of the run, yes, initially it's a southerly flow, but high pressure is trying to push into the Arctic. If we look at the northern hemisphere view, definitely blocking in the Arctic here. Big amplifications in the jet stream. So this does mean that it's very likely this high pressure does hang around, perhaps even move northwards beyond this. So a bit of a contrast to GFS, even though the initial setup for the UK is very, very similar. This is potential for further blocking and further positioning of the higher pressure to our north, as we do see these high pressure systems trying to push up. So we've got to keep an eye on that, as that could produce cold weather in the last sort of 10 days or so of November, like sort of at least a few days after this. So we'll have to see. Again, it is a precursor to any blocking. We're not seeing any major blocking or cold weather at the moment, but the signs are there, which could mean it could be coming within the next couple of weeks with this amplification jet stream and high pressure trying to ridge to our north. So yeah, GM not doing anything exceptional, but interesting patterns with extensive blocking towards the end of this run. If we do have a look at the ECMWF, again, high pressure, brief ridge of high pressure in at the moment, then generally a westerly flow, and then we see the high pressure push in. Again, initially a southerly flow, and it's actually not particularly dry. It's dry for a day or two for weather try and push in. And at day 10, you can see that high pressure is trying to ridge towards Svalbard and Scandinavia. There is cold air getting pushed into eastern and southeastern Europe. Be very cold there. Look at the temperature deviation, a good 10 to 12 degrees below average. But the UK was sort of in between the higher pressure and the lower pressure. And again, if we have a look at the northern hemisphere, we do see high pressure trying to penetrate the Arctic. Not quite as much as the GEM, but definitely is having a go. So you can see high pressure definitely building in from the middle of the month, but it's what happens after that, the positioning and where it goes, it's still yet to be determined. And that's why sometimes when we do see these charts just from the UK view or just on the ensemble line charts, it sometimes is a little bit misleading, because on the line charts we'll see in a minute, it is going to be going very, very mild and very dry. Not all of those runs will actually be mild towards the surface, because the upper air temperatures can be misleading. As I said, if we did see a easterly flow, the upper air temperatures might be warm, but towards the surface we could see an inversion, so it could actually be colder, or more towards average. And of course, that warmer upper air temperatures could actually allow the high pressure systems to pump further northwards, which could in turn 5 to 10 days later could produce cold weather. So we've got to keep an eye on it. It's very, very interesting to see this happening. It very much is in line with what we saw in the winter look-aheads, or we have been seeing with the winter look-aheads, with blocking becoming a major factor towards the middle of November onwards. And it's good that we are starting to see that in the model runs now, which shows you that the winter look-aheads are useful, and looking at sort of longer range charts can give us good idea on the trends, because there definitely is a high pressure blocking trend appearing now within the models, and again, it's just going to have to decipher what actually happens, what sort of actual surface conditions will we see. And as I said, it all depends on the positioning of the high pressure, the low pressure positioning, the wind direction providing or showing us where the air is originating from. So if we do now finally finish by having a look at the ensembles, you can see it is very mild ensemble members. We're only going to be able to have a look at the GFS, because again, the ECMWF is not updating, unfortunately. Don't know what is wrong with it, but it has been a little bit off the last sort of week or so. Not fully updating beyond maybe 5 or 6 days. There's no real point looking at it. But you can see the GFS fairly unsettled over the next 5 or 6 days, and generally around average upper air temperatures. We then rise well above average towards sort of 9 or 10 degrees Angel GHPA around the middle of the month, with big dry conditions. It does generally turn a little bit more unsettled in the longer term, and the upper air temperatures trend more towards average, so perhaps some more unsettled conditions coming. But as we saw from the operational runs, higher pressure could be shifting to our north, and that could mean cold weather is potentially there for the last 10 days or so. But as we know, anything beyond about 10 days on these ensemble members is very, very unpredictable. And 10 days is to about the 14th of November, where we are firmly under the warmer, higher pressure. So that's what we got at the moment, and we've just got to keep an eye on the longer term, whatever happens to that higher pressure. But yeah, for the time being, it's looking fairly unsettled, around average really, feeling cold some days, maybe slightly milder towards the early part of next week behind some of the warm fronts, and then towards the middle of the month, in around 7 days' time, we're going to build up quite a warm, at least initially warm, higher pressure system. Again, if it starts pulling more of an easterly, it could turn a little bit colder towards the surface, frost and fog and inversion. And again, if it pushes to our north, towards the latter parts of the month, it could turn colder or even more wintry. But again, we'll have to see. All cards are still on the table, and again, very, very interesting, this sort of pattern. It definitely is a lot better than a flat westerly that we have seen a lot of the times this time of year over sort of the last decade or so. Last year we saw a lot of blocking, and this year looking likely we're going to continue that trend. So at least a little bit more enjoyable to follow the models, a little bit more varied. So we'll have to see what happens. As I said, make sure to enjoy the rest of today. It is very dry, because the next 5 days is going to be very unsettled. But luckily, dry weather will be coming back in for the middle of the month. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.